our history of making films together began with a little camcorder when we were about 9 years old in New York. We actually started developing the language, making little short, funny videos and editing together on iMovie when editing software was still in that archaic phase, and that kernel of excitement that we would bring to when we would pitch each other ideas and for different shots. And we actually, I think at one point we determined to do a remake of Psycho because we were so obsessed with Hitchcock's Psycho that we were like, we're going to do a whole retelling of this with 13-year-old actors and like getting
People
locations.
Are gonna love it.
They're going to love it.
Hi, Petra. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Armand and Sam. Listen, this is morning in Los Angeles. So I say good morning to you. Wonderful.
Yes. Thank you for making time in your evening.
Boys, I'm a night owl.
Where are you now?
I'm in Vienna.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
You're wonderful.
Yeah.
You're a night owl. Yeah.
I'm a night owl. Yeah.
As are most artists.
I wake up at 11 at night. That's when I get my best ideas.
I think there's something about the hours of 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. that are the most lucrative for ideas. I think there's something about those hours. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I always say when 11 o'clock strikes, I can build a wall. And I have so much energy, and I think that's my most productive time always.
What might be interesting? It could be as a theory for that. It could be because we spend most of our days putting up a wall of kind of our ego, and then at the end of the day, once our ego, the energy of our ego is kind of depleted, then we are most our natural selves, and we don't feel like we have to put up a defense for anybody.
Yeah,
maybe.
That's true. Yeah, that can absolutely be. I'm all for that theory.
It's not the most conducive for a healthy lifestyle, but it's we didn't choose this lifestyle. It chose us, right?
Exactly. Hey, I'm 56 and I'm still going. So and I've always been a night owl, and even as a child. I could never.
You're reaching your prime at 56. Before that, I don't think there's any. We don't really know much about life before that.
Yes.
We're still just learning.
I see. I've thought of it this way: the first 50 years is the first part of your life, and then the next part, for however long it takes, is the second part. So I'm very young in my second life, So I see it that way.
There's also another quote. I'm sorry. There's another quote that, and you might have heard it before, but it's everybody has two lives. The first life, the second life starts when they realize they only have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but that's true.
Yeah.
No, that's absolutely true. Gentlemen, now you have such an amazing company. This is the New Angel Productions. Tell me about this. How did you start this company? Or what was the inspiration?
So both Sam and I are from New York City originally. We've known each other since we were 8 years old, grew up together. He's seen me in every stage of my life and I him. And the two of us ended up moving out to California in 2015. And we both had a background in storytelling and filmmaking specifically, and we came out here with ideas of continuing to tell stories together. Once we were out here, we delved kind of into the more business-oriented element of the industry. So he was working at CAA, which is arguably the largest creative talent agency. Yeah, and I was working at ICM, which was right across the street, and we would meet in the courtyard. And we would just dream of having our own operation someday. But in the meantime, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of educating ourselves on how the industry is actually built and how it all fits together. And so, he went his way, and I'll let Sam talk a bit more about his history. I went and worked for a small independent production company called Thunder Road, and they were making incredible work. And the best thing that I learned from my time at Thunder Road was that you don't need a lot of people to tell big stories and to reach a lot of people. And so that kind of inspired me to invest deeper into myself as a creative, and that ultimately spurred a conversation. It was actually Sam who reignited the conversation around our short film Ashore. It was something that he and I had been working on back in New York, but had kind of been put on the side burner as we were gaining experience in other parts of the industry. Mm-hmm. Sam brought it back to the forefront, and the two of us started working on it very actively again. We were both at the right stage in our own developments where we could really put the right resources creatively, emotionally, personally into the creation of that film, and it all just happened very organically.
Yeah.
Sam,
Yeah. Well, just to add to that, like Armand said, we've known each other for a very long time. And I think one of the things that's a bit unique about our partnership is the fact that, our history of making films together began with a little camcorder when we were about 9 years old in New York. We actually started developing the language, making little short, funny videos and editing together on iMovie when editing software was still in that archaic phase, and that kernel of excitement that we would bring to when we would pitch each other ideas and for different shots. And we actually, I think at one point we determined to do a remake of Psycho because we were so obsessed with Hitchcock's Psycho that we were like, we're going to do a whole retelling of this with 13-year-old actors and getting
people
locations.
Are gonna love it.
They're going to love it. We're going to do the shower. We're going to do everything. But we learned a lot because we actually, a lot of people, when they form bands or form companies, it usually takes them meeting someone else that shares their interests to ignite their own excitement about their art. For us, we're really lucky because it happened before we were even teenagers. So we kind of, were able to ignite the spark that was in both of us, and created this kind of safe place for the exchange of ideas. That kind of place, that spark that exists between us, has just kind of grown and fluctuated as we've grown up. And we went to the New York Film Academy together for a few summers and worked on each other's projects, learned how each other's works, learned the different voices we each have, but also the voice we share. And ultimately, through our paths that we've each traveled, I was working for a director for a little while out in LA, and I worked on a couple of shows, and most recently I associate produced a film that came out a few months ago. But all through that, our creative spark has been New Angel before it was even given that LLC a few years ago. It was always just those two kids playing with cameras, and we've just always, and it's grown alongside of us, and we continue to. Now it's been an exciting time the last couple of years because we've really fully invested in it.
Well, I love that the fact that you started as children, because I think the true artist, I don't know how to explain it, but I think it's the true soul of an artist is when they are young, when there's no, you have no rules, you haven't had any influences, nothing. It just comes from you. And like you say, the little camcorder that you had, and you had all these ideas of doing it. That I think is so lovely that it's, that you did that, and that you went to this path and saw, thought that you could to make films one day.
Well, it's the artist, the child in all of us. It's before you start to learn to self-edit, and you start to learn how to live in the world, like we were saying with the ego. And eventually, you start to learn how to fit in, and that could actually, in some ways, betray who you are as a young person. And I do think that, art and play are so intertwined. It's full expression, it's full joy, and so I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. And on top of that, I think that that idea of play and the idea of exploration is something that is like Sam was saying, it's unedited, and because of that, there are things that we can't even conceive of when we're actually playing, when we are able to be vulnerable with each other and bring ideas to each other and play. You know, that we couldn't even perceive of when we aren't in that mind state. You know, so it's important to bring ourselves back to that place where the real world isn't so heavy on us, you know, and where we feel like the stakes aren't so high, because then we could actually free ourselves up to create ideas that we wouldn't have otherwise when we were living the adult life in the real world that we all live every day.
And it's really interesting that you're saying that, because when I think about all the short films, music videos that we've done, our collection of work, a lot of it does have to do with kind of reclaiming a sense of youth, a sense of a creative spark that may at some point have been lost in just the path of growing up. And I think what happens sometimes is that people, when they live in the world and figure out how to function and fend for themselves, they start to create a persona that bleeds into their own internal life, where they also sometimes maybe don't even realize that they've become a different person, and they think that they have one way of being in the world and one way of being with themselves, but the line sometimes gets blurred. So, you know, you hear artists that feel like they've lost their connection with their younger self, and maybe it's just because that edited self has taken over in a weird way. So a lot of our work has to do with kind of reclaiming the joy in kind of unedited human expression, I think.
Fear.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I think also because I spoke to a photographer once that said that she actually found this, that, you know, she lost the confidence when she studied, after she studied photography, because then suddenly she started doubting herself because of all the things she's learned, you know, and then it's that spontaneity, I think, that you have, and this fearlessness that you have as a child, where you just believe that it's right, you know, you just, like you say, you know, you wanted to redo the film and think it was going to be the best, and that spirit, I think, that confidence as a child, it's so lovely to have.
It's interesting that you mentioned confidence and insecurity, because I do feel, you know, especially for me, and I think we talk about this often, is the certain insecurities that we have as people kind of coming up in this world, and how that insecurity is something that I think a lot of us run from. And you were talking about your photographer, this particular photographer who is experiencing this insecurity and this kind of lack of a sense of sureness that they had when they were a child. And I think it's that insecurity, like I said, that we run from, but also the thing that fuels the creativity ultimately, once you're willing to confront it. And I think that insecurity is actually the basis of what art is built from. At least
the vulnerability,
my art, your art, I see it in, you know, I see it in your personal work, and I think that willingness to confront it and not be so sure, and have the world consume it as they want to, and that be a completely different conversation that's separate from you as an artist, separate from me as an artist. We have to remove ourselves from the art consumption element, which is hard because art is a commodity and it's commercialized. So as artists, we can remove ourselves from that to actually be okay with creating the art that we create.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
But I'm a self-taught photographer, but I also started as a young child. I think I was probably 10 years old when I organized my own photo shoot. And that was still with a little Instamatic camera. And I gathered the children of the area where we lived, and I had them dress up and I did photo shoots. But still, I've never had formal photography education. So I see myself as a cowboy, you know, I shoot whatever I feel I like, and I do it the way I like to do it. Which probably, if you look at it, you know, if a art critic looks at it, you know, they would find many problems. But I don't also see myself as artist. I just see myself as somebody who snaps. But I think in what you are also experiencing in your field is this is an extremely creative field, and of course the pressure on you and the competition is so fierce, especially in America.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. We've been lucky in that with our film Ashore that we were able to spread it around outside of the U.S. because we draw our influences from everywhere. We're big Tarkovsky fans, and we're big French New Wave fans, and we did our studying in school, but we connect with that kind of personal storytelling, that kind of auteur cinema, because neorealism. Yeah, there's a sort of disregard for the critic because they kind of break the rules, and you can feel their heart in the work. So we were really thrilled when we took Ashore wide to see the response in places in Europe, and really connect with it and see those influences. There is something about American. Yeah, that would be an interesting conversation in itself, just about how America kind of has like a, they have like a distaste for like joy in a weird way. I don't know if it's not joy, but like they have a distaste for insecurity, showing your insecurity in the way of like, you kind of, it's like, don't let them see you sweat. You can't be caught in a moment of uncertainty, even if uncertainty is a predominant emotion for most of us all day. And so, in the work that we do, we try to express that uncertainty, unknowingness as emotion itself. And when people feel that, maybe it's like, I don't want to feel that right now. I want to have certainty. I want to know what I'm doing and have labels for things,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the concept of the American, the American dream is a trope, the American fairy tale, the disillusionment, the disillusionment of America is very interesting. Something that none of us experience. There's such a mental health issue that is kind of rampant around the world, but especially in America, and it's largely because of the societies, the pressures of society, that it on individuals to live up to some standard that's not attainable.
Refusal to feel.
But I wanted to mention, Petra, your photo shoot when you were younger. You are an outsider, you are a renegade, and you are an experimenter, and I think that is the most important element of creating art, so that American storytell is something, that American fairy tale is something it's something so overplayed. And I think that having that explorative nature in your work, where you don't have to think about how something is supposed to be and how something can just be, is the most important part. Ashore was actually regarded as experimental in a lot of the festivals that we took part in. We were in 20 international festivals and we won 6 of them, which was amazing.
Yes.
So happy. And it was, it was for the film, but it was also for cinematography and for our amazing actors, Richard Neal and Ezekiel Goodman and Will Holbrook, who carried it, cinematographer John Bellinger,
production designer Giovanna Turello.
Correct. Yeah.
Turello.
Yeah. And so it was regarded as an experimental film, and we never saw it as an experimental film. We just saw it as a film about young men who were on the verge of extreme change, who are reconciling with the ideas of a future that is without each other. And it's something that we all experience in life. This is a life story, and it doesn't feel experimental. This is as experimental as our own lives are, So it was just interesting that it kind of fell into an experimental, maybe because of the storytelling tools that we were using, jumping around in time and experimenting with space, sure, but the story itself felt very human and felt very familiar.
But but it's also something that you explore that we don't normally think about. You don't think about that as a storyline or as something to do a film about. And I think that is so extraordinary that you actually had that thought of thinking about that.
it's what we think about all day. I mean,
Yeah.
it is funny that, the experimental is really just being human, right? I mean, it's kind of brave to, I think the word courageous has to do something with heart, right? I'm pretty sure it has something to do with living in your heart. And that in a lot of places that is courageous because, it's different and it's straight. I mean, there is obviously, and there is a societal pressure to live a certain way, and there's a structure of that keeps our world humming along, and producing the things that we need and the communities that we thrive in. But to create that, we lose something, maybe a little bit. We lose maybe maybe an encouragement to be vulnerable, and that's where artists like all of us kind of come in, with living on our heart, our heart on our sleeve,
Yeah, and I think it makes us think, and the fact that you could do that to make people think, because to make people aware of that, I think that is so important in filmmaking and storytelling. That it leaves something behind. It leaves something that makes you see things in a different way. I think that's so important, that it's not just about the visuals, and that it's about this, all the ways of showing, that it's gimmicky in the sense. You know what I mean? So trying to do all these fancy things, but then the story, it disappears. But then now you've done something that really makes you think and really makes a change in how you see this subject.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think there's an element to it in photography as well. And I'd be curious to hear what you feel about this. But the desire to create film or to create photographs or to create music, I think, in the sense of Assure, we wanted to encapsulate a memory. We wanted to encapsulate an emotion, this feeling of fleeting time, this feeling of the last night of summer. That's something that feels so true to a lot of us, and it doesn't matter what your last night of summer was, what my last night of summer was, or what Sam's was. It's the idea of this passage of time that we'll never have again. And so I think when you're making photographs or you're making film or music, that you want to hold that, you want to bottle it, you want to give it to somebody else, because it's a moment in life for you, And I'd just be curious to hear, in terms of the other artists that you've spoken with, what your experience has been. Is right now a time? How do people want to remember right now? Obviously we have the heaviness of the pandemic, but your work with the artist's voice and the Instagram presence and everything is very light, and it's very, I was expecting, when I first heard of your work, I was expecting to see artists, kind of jailed from within their windows, but instead artists are sitting at their windows and they're waving down with their violin, and it's beautiful, we're all alone together, right?
Yeah.
So just interested to hear what where did the artist want to push right now? Where kind of in your experience?
Do you know what? This is so interesting. I mean, I can go on for hours about this. This is such an amazing experience, and I've learned, and I mean, I'm writing a book about this because it's what I've learned in the process from them, and it's interesting that I went with that idea. I thought, well, I went initially with the idea to cheer them up. Not that I went in a clown suit or anything. I just went with the camera and I thought, well, I'll just snap. For me, it would be nice because I love to photograph people. And I just thought it would be a nice something for them to do. But I've photographed 510 about 500 artists and 10 other people. I haven't asked anybody to smile, not once. I actually don't ever ask people to smile when I take their pictures, but I haven't asked any of them to smile. But they would tell me their story when I was there, or maybe we speak through the window or whatever. They would tell me the story, and they tell me this, that many concerts been cancelled and they didn't have, many didn't have an income. Many were on this threshold of going freelance, and then it was just not a good time for them. And really, very, very tragic stories that I heard. But the moment I said, okay, so there you could just get in the window and we'll take a picture. They owned that window, like 100%. Like you didn't even have to tell them what to do. They just did it, and like that, And it's really it was for me so helpful. It was for me so uplifting because they had the spirit. And I actually had a critic who said that I make them smile in a very tragic time. I honestly didn't. That it came from them. And I think this is the part of the artist that we don't realize, is that it's that getting on with it, sort of, it's, you just get on with stuff because it's their lives, they're performers, and they're all performers there. They did that in the window, I didn't have just one picture. I sometimes have 7, 8, because then they would say, oh, can I try this? Can I try that? I mean, we had a little semi-photo shoot in a window, and you think it's just a frame, but they used it and they were so creative. So, none of these pictures are staged. I can promise you that. They just very, very natural, yeah.
A huge testament to you as a photographer too, to create, I mean, the frame itself is almost like a permission to be vulnerable, right? So it's almost like you're creating a space for them to be vulnerable, and that just arises naturally from them. I think that's incredible. That's so cool.
Yeah. These people, artists, the world should learn from artists, because what I've learned in this year is unbelievable. And what I've also learned is that, and you are sitting there too, as two filmmakers, and there will not ever be anybody like Armand and Sam making films. And so there are many conductors, many pianists, but I can remember each one of them. I can remember each person I've photographed, each person I've spoken to in the artist voice, because you are so unique, so you bring, everybody has a different story, but a different perspective. And it's all positive. It's very positive and very uplifting, to speak to you and to hear your stories like this. This is wonderful for me.
Mutual, yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same. It's interesting, I'm just kind of imagining these artists that you have these interactions with for these brief moments in time, and they leave a mark on us because of their ability to express themselves in their most natural and human way. And it's interesting that vulnerability sticks with us, but that vulnerability doesn't alleviate the discomfort of bringing that vulnerability. If
the process of it,
right? Because every time we've taken that step, that's a new level from which we have to take the next step. So we are constantly leaving these interactions at the window, these interactions with you over Zoom. We're leaving these interactions and we're taking our vulnerability and searching for the next thing that we can put it into.
Right.
And a lot of Sam and my conversations consist of us, really confronting the fears that we're having. And yes, it is helpful to have a partner that we can, that has our back, that's a bouncing board for our ideas, that we know that we won't fall as people. But a lot of the growth as an artist comes from the feeling of falling, and so if you can take a photo of someone who, as soon as that window closes and they go back into their room alone, there's this whole slew of self-criticism and joy from creating and fear of what's going to happen and all of these things that take place in our own personal our own personal psyches. It's that thing that makes art and creating art so beautiful. It's that vulnerability that, we keep saying vulnerability, but it is that leap from one moment to the next of just trying to seek discomfort and seek something new and seek something that you can't control, or you can't put a veneer or a facade on. That's what is interesting to us as artists,
That's really interesting. Yeah. And it's so true. And I think the thing that we all feel when we connect with a piece of art, or we connect with a person that makes us feel a certain way, obviously the things you remember about people and about art are how they made you feel, right? That's ultimately what endures through all of this, right? It's you remember the way you felt when you saw this particular film, when you looked at this particular painting, when you had this particular conversation. But what's fascinating about it, and I think what's tricky about the role of the artist, is that you have to package that feeling in quite a bit of deception, because I think I'm realizing that a lot of people, obviously, we go through the world with our armor protecting us, that very tender emotional spot in the core of all of us that is the feeling that we all share, but we're all very nervous about exposing. So when you're making a film, or when you're doing, like, the art critic that talked about your photography that said you made them smile, you know what I mean? It's like there's a sense of judgment and also skepticism when someone is being shown something that has genuine, sincere emotion, and a lot of times it can be labeled as cheesy or nauseating, or like, trying to do too much, whatever it is. We're lucky in that we've never had that experience with a critic yet, but we could absolutely see how it could be challenging for an audience to be penetrated in that way. So a lot of it is there's a lot of irony and a lot of sarcasm that that's why I think a lot of the best art is kind of has some deception in it. It sneaks its way into your mind. Through humor and through deception, it kind of gets into you, and you're like, oh, I'm safe here. And then, but by the way, there's also this deep humanness in this, and that's where it plants in you and sticks around forever. I think show me an artist that doesn't feel it's a blessing that they don't have to go out and socialize. But also, I mean, it's also the artist, when life throws them anything, their job is to kind of be creative with it, and the limitations can even provide a lot of tinder for great experiments, and we can talk about kind of how what we did in our time.
What did you do?
Well, Sam had this amazing quote at the beginning of the pandemic, where he said, when you're inside, your walls become mirrors. And so that was a big wake up call for me. I actually ended up doing quite a bit of traveling during the time. In the first summer of the pandemic, I went up with my girlfriend and I. We went to the Pacific Northwest, and we experienced some beauty and some nature. And a big part of that trip for me was reconnecting with the night sky, and just wanting to feel the awe of being in a small speck in this vast ocean of existence. And by no means can I now wrap my head around what that is, but I definitely feel the awe from that trip. And there were some other amazing adventures. It was really about trying to expand my horizons once again. We've been living in Los Angeles for about 7 years now. And no matter where you are, if you allow yourself to stay there, that will become the size of your world. Right. So if that's true. No matter where you're working or where you're living, if you stay in that space, it will become your world.
Right. And it's up to you to expand it. Absolutely. Because you will make it your world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's kind of that's how I took charge throughout this experience. Yeah.
And Sam?
Well, I had been working on a movie that we were editing during lockdown. So the editing process was just made remote. That didn't change too much. But in terms of creative stuff, we came up with a couple cool ideas, because obviously we wanted to stay connected with our audience, and we wanted to continue to make stuff. obviously we wanted to follow all the CDC guidelines and stay up to date on all the latest information. But we actually came up with an idea of, we're like, okay, how do we make films now without production, right? So we can't go out and shoot footage, but we can source footage, you know, and we can find footage and kind of, you know, we're filmmakers that really focus on emotion, and we really want to find an emotion and then explore it and try to package it in a way that is invisible to other people. So we came up with this idea of kind of finding footage, scouring the internet for footage that inspires us, with the and then kind of letting an emotion arise out of the footage that we're finding, listening to music, and essentially putting a 2 to 4 minute short music video together with this abstract color and footage. We developed the idea and called it From Nothing a Rose, because basically from nothing we're taking all this stuff and turning it into kind of just a piece, you know what I mean? And like artists are supposed to do ultimately, is they take what's given and then you turn it into something and you give it back. You're like, this is how I see it. So we made 3 little roses, and we have the 4th one coming out soon, where I actually went to New York and shot a bunch of footage of the city opening up. And I got some faces, and I did some kind of point and shoot kind of photography. And we actually teamed up with an incredible poet named Sarah Kay, who's a very incredible person. She wrote this poem about New York called Hometown. And we actually then collaborated with a musician named Caroline Shaw, who composed this piece for us for this New York inspired piece. So now we all of a sudden have all this footage of New York, this beautiful poem by this poet, read by the poet, and this beautiful piece. And we're kind of tying it together in the same spirit of just making something out of nothing, which was our chief directive during the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, we called it a visual meditation. It was a way of reaching out to our audience, our wonderful supporters and backers, and all those who have kind of been following our journey from the start, and just creating a space where we can all kind of feel something together at the same time. No matter what feelings those bring up in you, it doesn't matter. It's just the idea of all of us experiencing the same thing together, and to meditate in that space for a short amount of time while it feels like we're all alone. So, and then it's also worth mentioning that during the pandemic as well, we started alongside Design Pavilion, which is a New York-based design activation, which takes place in Times Square. We started a talk series with them. It was originally on Zoom, but it was bringing together designers and artists and other creative thought leaders to talk about the current state of society and how we could take creative problem-solving approaches towards our society to create and redesign the world we live in towards more equitable and socially conscious solutions. So that's been an incredible project for us, and we actually just returned from New York last week. There'll be a 4-part four-episode series coming out in mid-November of Design Talks. Now it's the visionary sequence, and it's the first series of talks back in person. Right. That will be releasing. Right. So yeah.
Oh, but that's wonderful. You must please send me the link then when you release it, because this is so important, I think, because I've also spoken to many artists about this, that art, the value of art is not just what we see in the concert halls. It's the artists. It's what artists brings to society, and artists have to talk, we have to listen. And this is why I do also these interviews and what I did over lockdown is, if people start listening to these, to the inputs and the perspectives of artists, then it changes, it will change how we see art and how we experience art, because of the way you talk and how you approach life and how you approach your projects, and I think this is so important. It's excellent that you did that work.
Out of curiosity, I'm just curious, what, Petra, inspired you to do photography, like what is it, what do you look for when you're taking photos? I mean, I think I think our artists in general, I'm very curious about the spark that inspires you to do what you do, and what inspires you about certain environments and certain conditions. Like what draws you to photography specifically as a medium?
Well, I see the world a different way, I think, and I think it's for me difficult. Well, I say difficult. I love the way I love that I can do photography because I see things that I always want to capture, and but as I say, I just take pictures. I just don't, I see a scene and I take it. I don't go around planning it and sitting there for hours with a tripod. And I walk the city and I photograph actually people. I love street photography, but and I photograph love because I'm in love with love, and it might be cheesy for people, but I love to see people holding hands. I love to see people sitting next to each other, and I think we can also learn from that because I've got thousands of pictures of people holding hands, and I can tell you they all do it differently. The chemistry between people are so different. It's unbelievable. Every time I think, well, now I wouldn't be able to get another picture, then I get another picture that I think, oh wow, isn't it amazing how they walk or how they interact with each other. And so for me, that's the type of photography that I like, people's interaction with each other and couples, you know. And then portraits, I love to capture. I think of it always, if you have a photo shoot, you get one picture or two pictures where you really capture the soul of the person, where you really capture that one picture where you think, okay, this is this person. If you can do that, if you can find that, then I think then I feel successful. But the problem is that's not always the picture the people want to see. That I also realize, you know, that portrait photography, many people take many pictures of people, but I think if it's really a portrait, it really has to be not about. I don't edit. That's what I manipulate light when it's too dark or so, but I don't edit faces because I think you lose too much when you do that. And yeah, sometimes people have an expression, and when I can get that expression where I think, yes, this is the person, they don't always like that. But then I always know that it's because they're not there yet. They don't have the self acceptance, or they're not at ease with who they are. That's why they wouldn't like the picture, you know?
They have the courage to see themselves that way.
Yeah, yeah. And then, you know, I also then never post a picture like that because even though I have the pictures that I think this is the people, but I would never force it on them because I think it's also not the aim of a photographer to make somebody feel uneasy. You have to, sometimes I have had pictures taken and given it to people and they've never used it. And then 2 years later, I see they used the picture. Then I know, they're there now. They've, you know, they now see that's what I've seen. Yeah.
Do these portraits live on a website, or are they? I'd love to see some of the work. Is any of?
Yeah, I've got pictures on my website. I post the ones that I like, and I post, you know, if you can have a look there. It's all pictures that I like that I put on my website, you know, of people that I photographed that I put on my website. But as I say, I'm not one of, I'm not I don't do these edited stuff, you know, this smooth look and this, all that kind of thing that's, you know, I'm not 20 anymore. I don't have to prove anything. I just do what I like. Yeah.
We do a lot of work on the actor's process as well. You know,
Yeah.
just trying to dissect what creates real experience, real interpersonal, authentic experience.
Right.
And you know, to your point about capturing the true somebody, the true subject, and them not necessarily being ready to accept it is a very real concept. You know, and a lot of our most authentic moments come from somebody looking at us and telling us, you're not who you think you are right now. You know, there's something else going on. And I could see that. And while it's uncomfortable, it's true. And you know, being able to sit with somebody in that moment and have them either accept that reality or not be ready to accept that reality is an important experience in itself.
It's almost like to round it back to what we started the conversation with. It's almost as if that self-editing mechanism has gone offline for a millisecond.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it's like that mechanism that that is the idea of the self, right? That we talk to, you know, we talk with, and we use the faculties of to navigate the world. But maybe in certain portraits or certain images, that goes offline for a quick second, and you actually see the person, and you know, for who they are, and it's maybe it's not a mirror. Some people don't like to see a mirror, you know what I mean, with the right light and with the right expression. So it's really fascinating. I think we're all super.
You know, it's interesting with the artists as well, because when I sourced the people that I wanted to photograph, I went on social media and I just decided that I will go on a feeling, you know, just on an energy from people. And I would go through my news feed and I would go on suggested, you know, people from Facebook and so on. And then when I, in the end, visited these people, and sometimes I couldn't recognize them because the profile picture was so edited that it didn't look like the same person actually, you know, or it was like maybe 10 years ago and you know, it was overlit and then it just didn't look the same. Yet every person I photographed, I didn't edit anything on the pictures, not even if there was a hole in the wall, not a crack, nothing. I kept the walls, the buildings as they were, the people as they were. And they're all beautiful. They're beautiful with all their natural things, you know. And I think that's what that's why my pictures are, for me, so precious, is because I captured them really in their most natural setting and also their natural look. You know, some of them didn't have makeup on. It was just normal hair, no, you know, artist type of picture. They are not those type of pictures. And this is why I hope people look at that and see that natural, you know, that we should go back to that natural people. I like natural
It's such a manicured, it's such a manicured existence. We all have our digital avatars, right?
Yeah.
That we curate and create, but there has to be something more poetic and more beautiful once you take that away and you let people just live as they are. Isn't that what is the most poignant experience in being human, you know? Yeah.
And as the artist, continuing to make work and be okay with the imperfections, because the frequency of work takes the pressure off of finding the perfection in the subject. Being okay with the imperfections will throughout the course of your artistic exploration, find those true moments that have the intersection of beauty and imperfection, and that decisive moment where truth in the subject and truth in the environment and truth in emotion and the interconnectivity with the audience all makes sense. And then that's only found through constant exploration.
When I spoke to the artist about about streaming and about performing and concerts and things like that, what they would all tell me is what they love about live concerts is that it's not perfect. There's always something, and that you can go to 5 concerts, the same pianist, the same music, and it will be 5 different experiences. Which makes me think also that we as humans actually like imperfection,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's actually interesting about that, now that I think about it, with filmmaking as a medium specifically, there's an interesting relationship with imperfection because it's such an edited process. And not only in the editing room, but the frame itself. If you move the camera frame of any movie you've seen about a hair to the right, you will see a person holding a microphone. You will see a person holding a light. The frame you're seeing is literally the only acceptable for the director, right? But at the same time, what do people love to see online more than anything is like bloopers, is people like, is things going wrong, is the plan not working? You know what I mean? So it's like delightfully human when people, and also not only that, but you hear stories of actors who actually broke the glass and their hand is bleeding, and those are the stories, or actually lost all this weight. It's these stories of what's actually real that compel people the most and inspire people the most. The plan not going according to plan.
Yeah, there were times in the editing process of Ashore where Sam and I looked at each other, and we're incredibly particular when it comes to every element of it. We just we can obsess for hours over any decision. But
because by the way, just because you have to manicure, even you have to control and create that sense of realism as well. That's not necessarily arising naturally. You have to create the conditions for that. Right. So Absolutely. It is a manicure process, as authentic as it.
Right. If you break that trust too much, it no longer feels.
It's not art.
Right. But so Sam and I were looking at it. We would have these moments in the editing process where there was a moment where we could go one way, which was the clean way, or one way, which was the purposely imperfect way. And sometimes as artists, you just have to say, let's go the road less traveled. It's not even the road less traveled, but let this be what it is.
Right.
Let's leave this moment a little bit.
Just challenge though.
Right, exactly. It's a conversation, and that's really interesting what you say about the musician who's listening to the concerts. I can't normally, unless there's something glaringly, there's a glaring mistake in the performance, I can't really tell, but there are imperfections, and that is a part of the conversation between the audience and the performer, and that shouldn't go away,
Right.
But I want to ask you now, in the filmmaking process, this is what we don't always take into account, but it's a long process. From the start, where you start with the whole idea and the concept till you actually release a film, is a very long process, and the shooting also is very time consuming. Tell me about this process. How long can it be, and how do you work on that? Do you work every single day, and how do you plan something like that? Because sometimes it can be years, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, most feature films take years. Our short film took years. Our 20-minute took 5 years, basically, from conception to completion. From idea to into the world, it took about 5 years. It's a marathon, you know what I mean? And you hope that the kernel of the idea fuels the whole process, because ultimately you're going to run into so many roadblocks and doubts and crises of faith of the, but what a benefit of having a partner is just someone who's always there to remind the other one in moments of doubt about what the original idea was. There's always there's the movie you conceptualize, then there's the movie you shoot, and then there's the movie you edit, and then there's the movie that lives in the world. They're different movies. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure, most filmmakers would say that the movie that's on the screen is not exactly what they had in their head. You know what I mean? There are sacrifices that have to be made. It's when idea meets reality, but that's often where the most interesting stuff happens,
Absolutely. And then the individuals, the writers, the creators themselves. I watched Sam grow as a human throughout the course of, we
physically and mentally.
Right, exactly. And when we originally had the idea for a short, for example, this kind of came to us on a night when we were plotting our drive from New York to Los Angeles in New York. And it was a snowy night. And we had this, we were supposed to be looking, okay, where are we going to stop for gas? Where are we going to stop for, for a bed, for rest? And instead we had this idea of a man who washes ashore. He's a man in a suit, and he washes ashore on a random beach. And that's what stayed with us for 5 years throughout our drive to Los Angeles, our work in the agencies, production companies, on other features and other projects and TV shows. I mean, this thing stuck with us. And it was honestly the curiosity of what this could be that kept us going. We didn't know the story. We didn't know the story until we were shooting the story.
Right.
We were writing the entire way. And sometimes Sam related more to one character. Sometimes I related more to the other character. And we would switch. Our psyches changed throughout the process. So filmmaking is gruelingly tedious and laborious and long
draining.
and drawn out and draining. I have such an envy of musicians who can, go and express themselves fully in a day of
in a
work.
live way. With a film, you have to have like 80 people always. like there's no.
Right.
I mean, unless you're just the person with the camera, which I guess is the most fundamental form of it. The filmmaking process is by its very nature a team. You have to have a team.
Absolutely. Yeah. But it's just, it could take as long as it needs to. And you have to find new reasons to recommit to the project and to the overall vision. Mm. And if it's based in a memory or something very elemental, a feeling, then it feels a bit easier to subscribe to that mission and have your story mold along the way, as opposed to start with the story and have your changing perspective of the world mold to that story along the way.
And it actually, I think the process is definitely has a lot of parallels with other media and at different times. So when we're actually shooting, it probably has a lot in common with photography, because it's a mix of wanting to encourage the subject to bring out some authenticity in their own way, but also in service of your idea. So there is an intermingling of kind of spontaneity, kind of cut with the director's job, which is to manage that authenticity in a way that services the overall idea. So where it differs from kind of the sort of more candid street photography is that you are directing the subject, and you're kind of encouraging them in certain ways. So you're kind of managing them. And then in other ways, when you're editing, say, it's a lot like painting, because or sculpting, it would be a better one. Because you're every day, it's down to a second or two, and you take it back in. You have to continually have fresh eyes. You turn away, you sleep on it, you look at it the next day and think, is this better? Is this worse? You show friends, do you like this? I mean, it's a always changing, evolving process.
Yeah, because 3 minutes in a film, it takes a very long time and many filming to get a 3-minute segment of a film, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and it could be 3 minutes. You can cover years, and 3 minutes can be 3 minutes. And 3 minutes can be slower than 3 minutes. It's just and all of them can have profoundly different effects on the individual viewer. So those are all those decisions that you have to weigh: time, space, light.
Yeah, in a typical day, you're lucky to get. We shot a show in 4 days. It's 20 minutes film, basically. A lot of films, we worked on a feature recently. The film was about 2 hours long, and we shot it over 60 days. And then the whole editing process took, it was 2 years to make. You're lucky to shoot 4 to 5 minutes a day. Yeah.
And now for you, this is the creative side now, and this is when you create. But for you to make a living, do you have to do commercial work, for example, for a filmmaker in America, say, for example, you have to do commercial work to fund yourself and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we are actively onboarding different collaborations between brands. We're doing a lot of design-centric stuff on our branded side. So our work with Design Pavilion has really taken up a large part of our slate from 2020 through now, and will continue into the end of 2021. But yeah, so there's a lot of branded work that we are working on. We've been lucky for it to feel still creative and socially relevant and a social commentary. So it hasn't really felt like commercial work necessarily. But yes, there are those brand partnerships, there are those commercial partnerships that we need to keep our creative vision and exploration alive. So that's what we've been doing. A lot of independent partnerships with artists, musical artists. So we are seeking new musicians to team up with to create beautiful audio visual experiences with. And just, I think Sam and I could agree that the work that we've put into this point has kind of afforded us the opportunity to take the projects that are meaningful to us and partner with the other creatives and brands that are in line with what we want to do. This is a grueling industry, and I got a great piece of advice from a mentor of mine who said, it's a long career. If you're lucky, you do what you think you can do the longest. So if we're talking about endurance and longevity in this career, then we have to make sure we're taking on the projects that mean something to us.
Right. That eventually return in the future. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Creatively.
Yeah. We could look back on and say that this time right now was spent well. Right. Because we're not guaranteed another project. Sam and I approach every project that we have together as this is a blessing because we're able to do this.
Right.
And wherever life takes us and whatever happens, we want to make sure that we're investing the most that we can in the moment.
Yeah, because you also have the equipment you use is not cheap. You also have to invest in all these equipment.
Yeah, it's a kind of thing where luckily we're the two of us have been out here for a long enough time where we've made certain connections out here with equipment rental houses and other outfits that a lot of what you'll see out here is deals being worked out between young filmmakers or filmmakers of a certain stature with equipment house rentals and exchanging for we'll shout you guys out in the credits, or we're going to advertise for your outfit on the next thing. It's trading exposure. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So that's a huge way, and the whole industry is. We pride ourselves on always paying our crew and paying everyone we work with, a respectable wage. And to do that, sometimes we have to pull the strings with the big equipment house rentals, and figure out how to divert the money to the team that's actually putting the hours in on the ground.
Right. Yeah. And the festival exposure is good as well. There's international exposure and it is an opportunity for these equipment companies to be seen, and everything comes back around. These relationships are the most important thing. And we've had really, really great experiences with the people that we've met and worked with out here. They're friends and they're colleagues and they're creatives. And now's a great time to shout out Ian Scholes, who's our producer on Ashore and has been our head of production at New Angel Productions. And not only is he an amazing creative mind, but he is also just a a wizard when it comes to producing, and it's because of him and his ingenuity that we were able to make this ultra low budget film seem like something. I mean, the comparisons that we've received are flattering, to say the least, and it's because of the creativity that that Ian has had on the producing side to make it even possible. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Maybe I should talk to him too.
I think you should. Yeah, we'd be happy to connect you. Of course.
Yeah.
It would be an interesting kind of thing because every art, I mean, you know, an artist ultimately, like, you know, needs, if they don't have it within themselves, they need to have someone who can navigate that world, you know, and navigate promoting and relationships. If that, you know, it's such an essential job to produce it.
Yeah, all these parts of the artists, you know, all these collaborations, it's so important to talk to everybody, because then you hear also their side and you hear what their input is in this industry. But now tell me, gentlemen, what is the wish?
What's your wish?
What's my wish?
Yeah.
Oh man. I mean, look, like from a selfish wish for me, if I'm going to be selfish, I would say the ability to do this for a long time. You know, I mean, that's all I could ask. You know, to be able to create with my best bud and my partner, my creative partner, as long as we can. You know, I mean, this is a dream. We get to do this. You know what I mean? It is a dream to do this, and so a selfish wish for me would be to be able to continue to tell stories and to tell even bigger stories and do this for the rest of our lives. I mean, this is the dream. We're already kind of living it, I think.
I don't think it's selfish, because when you're telling these stories, it's affecting people and it's positive, you know. So in a way, you will also touch other people. So I think it's a great wish to have.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And I think that the other side of that, which Sam and I talk about often, is the ability to not only create a place for us to be the most authentic versions of ourselves and continue to grow personally as we develop, you know, these stories and this company that we're building, but also to provide space within to provide a space within the content that we make for other people who are watching to approach it with the most honest version of themselves. So create a place that we can be open and vulnerable and invite other people to hopefully connect in some way in that space, quietly or together, by reaching out to us and welcoming a conversation, starting a conversation, and you know, just creating a human place where we can all be ourselves.
And the New Angel Productions, the name New Angel, where did that come from?
Right. Well, we were born and raised in New York City, and we moved to Los Angeles. So it's our two homes, New Angel. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, okay, yeah. Now I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. But we said it and it just clicked.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I love the whole logo. It's beautiful. You have such great energy between you. You know, you can see that it's real friendship there, and I can just imagine that it's also the creativity between you. You know, that you really get each other, and it's amazing. I think wonderful things will still come from you. You have to just keep me updated.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing everything that you do, and we will continue to watch The Artist's Voice. And thank you for giving a voice to these artists during this time. It's amazing what you do, and your way of going about it, the curiosity that you show in your own work, but towards other artists, is amazing, and there should be more of that. So thank you for doing that.
No, thank you so much for your kind words. It helps me as well to just be, you know, if I know it's meaningful, and I just think, I sometimes think if one person's words that I'm speaking to can help somebody, you know, or can encourage somebody, because it's sometimes I think you as artists also do these things, and you don't realize that everybody else has the same struggles sometimes.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing watching these artists and their craft. And once you have a sense to the effort that goes into it, you really realize that this is such a cherished skill that somebody has and worked so hard to develop and put so much care into it, and that should be valued, you know, more than it is right now. You know.
Yeah.
We put a lot of money into the presentation, the gold plated theater around it, but the artists themselves who laid themselves there on the stage only have themselves. So
yeah. But listen, this was so lovely to talk to you. I wish so much when you come to Vienna, we should please meet in person.
So there's a chance we'll be there next year.
Really? Oh wow!
Yeah, so we'll absolutely be in touch. And
yes.
And if it's in there, then it'll be a party.
Love to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love to.
We must definitely get together when you come. I love the energy between you. Honestly, this is so lovely. So so positive. Yeah.
Yeah. You as well. Thank you for all you do. Seriously, it's been a real joy.
Yeah, and please keep me updated about what you do and new projects and so on, so we can talk. Have a lovely day.
You too. Thank you so
in
much
Los
for having
Angeles, and speak to you soon.
Thanks for making the time.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.